So what I'm actually going to do this morning is talk a little bit about cybersecurity myths. The one thing with cybersecurity is that there's actually all kind of myths that do the rounds. What I'm going to do this morning is try and shoot 5 of them down and get you thinking a little bit about security. Okay. So, myth number 1. Small businesses don't get targeted by cyber criminals. This is the old, it's not going to happen to me. Well, actually, yes, it probably isn't going to happen to you until it does. And the reason that small businesses tend to get targeted is, you know, a lack of robust security measures, more of which later, underestimating the threat as well. There are people out there who will just do things because they're there. A customer of mine, small one-person, independent financial advisor, got his website trashed by a Bangladeshi hacking group for no other reason than it was there and it was vaguely financial in nature. You know, there was absolutely no benefit to them, financial benefit to them from doing it. It was just a standard catalogue type website, but they trashed it anyway. So yeah, never underestimate the threat. The other thing is, even if you're a small business, you've probably got some valuable data there anyway, about your customers, potentially about employees. And you can also be a gateway to bigger targets as well. I was talking to someone about this the other week, and effectively, they were used as a gateway to attacking one of the large finance houses because it was known that they dealt with them. So, you know, you don't have to be big yourself. It can be who you know, not what you have. Password complexity is the key to security. Well, up to a point, yes, you do need to make sure that your passwords are suitably complex, but people tend to be predictable. They'll use variations on the same sorts of things as their passwords. They'll reuse passwords for different accounts. You can be susceptible to social engineering. Who's actually seen those things on Facebook that ask what the colour of your first car was? Or one I saw recently said, we're expecting our first baby. It's a girl, and we'd like a really old-fashioned girl's name. What was your grandma's name? With that particular one, within about 8 hours, 148,000 people had potentially revealed the answer to one of their security questions. So, you know, it's easily done. Brute force and dictionary attacks. In order to actually remember passwords, you know, we tend to make them look like words, don't we? You know, even if we do things like substituting the @ symbol for A's and zeros for O's, and, you know, we tend to make them look like words. Attackers actually know that, and they'll actually try and brute force them with common substitutions. And also data breaches. Quite a lot of people have had data breaches. You know, LinkedIn Facebook have before now. If you're using the same password on for other things that you're using for one of those services, your password's going to have been compromised, potentially. So while complex passwords are very much a good idea, you should also be using password managers and probably two-factor authentication as well. All cyber attacks are immediately noticeable. That is probably the biggest myth of them all. A study by IBM showed that on average, it takes about 200 days for a cyber attack to be noticed. And there's a number of reasons for that. Firstly, they can be stealthy. If you look at ransomware that locks up your data, it does it slowly. And you're not actually going to realise that you've got a problem until you try and open one of the files that it's already encrypted. Data can be exfiltrated very, very slowly. It's not a straight smash and grab type exercise. They can sit there, it can sit there and exfiltrate a few bits of customer data potentially at a time, and you may never ever notice, especially if you're not really monitoring what's going in and out of the organisation. It's also possible to misinterpret what you see. A lot of these things masquerade as others. A case of mine from several years back now was actually one of our major airports, where the finance director, and this is going to age it, the finance director opened an attachment on an email that promised topless photos of Pamela Anderson. I told you this was going to date it. And infected the whole network with a network scanning Trojan. And we actually only spotted that because they called us in to do something else. And we thought, hang on a minute, what's generating all of this traffic? You know, they just did not know they'd had a problem. They'd got a problem. Insider threats as well. It doesn't have to be clever bits of software. There was one of our major mobile phone companies that had a bit of a problem with their call centre staff. You may remember a good few years back now, all the rage was you getting calls soliciting your mobile phone contract when your existing contract was coming up for renewal. One of the ways that they actually did that was that the call centre staff were copying customer records onto USB sticks and taking them home and selling them. So, you know, don't forget the insider threat. You know, you're probably not much of a threat if you're a single person business, but put a few people in there and you've got a bit more of a risk. Myth 4, antivirus software guarantees total protection. Well, actually, no, it doesn't. The threat landscape is always changing. Antivirus software is not going to catch things like social engineering attacks. It's not going to catch things that are called zero-day exploits. Now, what they are is flaws that have always existed in software, but have only just been noticed. Going back a few years now, when the NHS got attacked by the WannaCry malware, that is what's called a zero-day attack. There was a flaw in Microsoft software that hadn't been patched, and it was exploited to actually spread this ransomware around and lock people out. There's also a thing called fileless malware, which is catching the imagination of a lot of hackers now. Generally speaking, this is going to download from a website, but may well not get caught because by an antivirus, because it hasn't actually got a file attached to it. It's just being very clever about the way it exploits downloads from websites. Myth 5, cybersecurity is solely a technology issue. Quite a lot of breaches and cybersecurity problems result from human error. You know, to err is human and all that. As I said earlier, social engineering attacks, people revealing things they shouldn't reveal on social media. Those insider threats that I was talking about. You also need education and awareness. You know, you can do some things to block phishing emails, for example, but you really do need to teach people how to spot them.
2 minutes, Lee.
Sorry?
2 minutes.
Okay. And you also need to think about physical security. You can put all of the technology you like in and around your IT environment, but if you go and leave the laptop on the back seat of your car, you know, you're asking for problems. So things you can do: password manager, multi-factor authentication, keeping all your operating systems and all of your software up to date. Both Microsoft and Apple do a reasonably good job of keeping the operating systems up to date, but what about all the other software you've got? Particularly some of the more obscure things. Vulnerability scanning, particularly with Microsoft, there's a number of things that get turned on by default that you probably don't want on, but unless you actually scan for it, you're not going to spot it. Antivirus with endpoint detection and response. Bit of a mouthful there, but essentially what it's doing is looking at the way programs behave rather than just scanning them against known problems. Education and awareness. One of the things we do, for example, is simulated phishing campaigns to see who actually falls for it. You know, it's worth doing. And of course, physical security. Don't leave equipment in silly places. And think about what you're doing if you're working remotely in a coffee shop, for example. So, that's me, Lee Thomas, Stress-Free IT Solutions, turning your IT into an asset.
Thank you, Lee. That was brilliant.
Brilliant as always, and so many questions that makes me that I've got that I need to deep delve into. So when it comes to password managers, what have you got some good recommended password managers that people should be using?
Yeah, well, I mean, we actually use NordPass.
NORD, Nord.
NORD, which I say was we built it, you know, as I was suggesting earlier in the 60 seconds, we built that into our support packages.
So do you use NordVPN as well, so when you're browsing, or do you
Yes,
using the UK address? But
yes,
that too. Does that help when you use a VPN to not get attacked or not?
Up to a point, yes. Particularly, you know, so if you're using public Wi-Fi, then you really need to be using a VPN. Right.
Okay. Do you know, it's quite interesting because a few weeks ago, I wanted to download a YouTube video. That was one of these, just a training video really, and I downloaded. I used to have a thing called video download or whatever it was. They started charging. It used to be free for ages, but they started charging monthly subscription service. So I deleted it. And then somebody I worked with recommended a thing called Any Video Converter, which he'd been using and quite safely. I went to download it, and as soon as I went to download it, my antivirus kicked in and blocked it. Yeah, and then it just I tried to download it on another PC, did the same thing. So it was clearly something was coming off their website that the
oh yeah. Well, I mean, you don't.
I just didn't. In the end, I just deleted the start of the file and left it, but found something else. But yeah, that came off a website that looked completely legit that I know other people have been using, but it came off the so on their website it was.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, and it doesn't have to be an obscure website or an obscure program either. I mean, it was a legit. Jamie Oliver got attacked several times, and his website was downloading malware onto people's laptops on at least 4 occasions.
Oh gosh. Sorry,
Aaron's got a
hand.
Oh, yeah, I'm off mute. You might have just actually answered that, Lee, but I'm quite nomadic and I'm often working in coffee shops and whatever. So if I am logging in through their whatever it is, internet, whatever, Wi-Fi. Does that secure me then, or am I still open as using their Wi-Fi?
You would still be open. You're going to be getting the benefit of any encryption that your software uses.
Okay.
So so if you're browsing a website that is using a certificate, then it's secure up to a point, but you should still use a VPN with that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
And Heather's got one more question. We've got Heather with the hand up there.
Yeah, I actually, it was my niece quite a few years ago now suggested that I used a formula, and I find that incredibly good, because wherever I am, I can use, whatever site I'm on, whatever I'm doing, I can use that formula to create a different password for everything, and I remember it as long as I don't get dementia. So, do you think is that a good idea?
It works up to a point. It depends a lot on how complex the formula is. So, I mean, obviously, you're not going to want to tell people how it works, but I've seen people who've told me that they've used a formula before, and actually, it really wouldn't take you that long to figure it out. So, I mean, it's obviously something only you will know. It depends on how complex the formula is, and how much the passwords that it gives you differ from each other.
Yeah,
the best thing is sorry.
They're all different, because it depends what you're in, unless you're going to the same site all the time. Then
well, I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous example, but I've had someone say that to me before, and their formula involved letters out of the name of the website, the month, and the house numbers of various relatives. So it really wouldn't take that long. The other thing to bear in mind as well is if it tends to generate passwords that look like English, even if you can't work the formula out, you could still brute force it.
I find the best way with passwords is to use a password manager that picks a password that you never see.
Yes.
So I don't know. If anybody asked me for my password, I couldn't tell them.
No.
It's all built into the password manager.
Yeah, I mean, I effectively have one password, which is the password to the password manager.